They cleared my desk while I was gone. Lawyer was waiting outside. They say when one door closes, another opens. What they don't tell you is that sometimes they change the locks while you're not looking, pack your life into cardboard boxes, and leave them on the curb like trash waiting for pickup. I learned that on a Thursday afternoon in September, standing in the parking lot of Harrington and Associates with my key card rejected, and my career in a box at my feet. The building was glass and steel, 12 stories of architectural ambition in a business park that had been sold to us as the future of corporate innovation. From where I stood, it looked like a monument to betrayal, every window reflecting a version of myself I didn't recognize anymore. My name is Catherine Shaw, and I used to be the director of client relations at Harrington and Associates, a management consulting firm that helped Fortune 500 companies optimize their operations and restructure their organizations. The irony of that last part wouldn't become clear until later, when I was the one being restructured out of existence. I'd been gone for 3 days. A conference in Chicago, the National Association of Management Consultants annual meeting, the kind of event where business cards change hands like currency and everyone pretends their company is thriving. I'd presented on client retention strategies, spoken on a panel about relationship management, networked until my feet hurt and my smile felt like it might crack. 3 days, 72 hours during which, apparently, my entire professional existence had been erased. The first sign something was wrong came when my keycard didn't work at the main entrance. I tried it twice, 3 times, thinking maybe the battery was dying or the reader was malfunctioning. The little light stayed red, that electronic rejection that feels more personal than it should. I called the front desk from my cell phone. Marie, the receptionist who'd been there longer than anyone, who knew everyone's coffee orders and whose birthday it was. "Marie, it's Catherine. I think there's something wrong with my keycard." Catherine. Her voice was strange, flat, the voice of someone who'd been told what to say. "You need to speak with HR. They're expecting you." "HR, I just got back from Chicago. I have client calls scheduled. Your office has been reassigned. HR is expecting you. 3rd floor, conference room, B." Reassigned? Such a clean word for what I would later learn had happened. 2 security guards, 3 cardboard boxes, my personal effects cataloged and packed with the efficiency of people who'd done this before and would do it again. I walked around to the side entrance, the one employees used when they were running late. This door worked. Apparently they hadn't gotten around to deactivating all my access points. Small mercies. The office felt different as I walked through it. Quieter than usual for a Thursday afternoon. People at their desks, but not quite looking at me, or looking too quickly and then away. The furtive glances of witnesses to something they didn't want to be associated with. I took the elevator to 3. Conference room B was at the end of the hall, glass walls with the blinds drawn. Never a good sign. Through the frosted glass, I could see shapes moving, more than one person. I paused outside the door, took a breath, straightened my blazer. Whatever was happening, I would face it like a professional, like someone who'd spent 15 years building a career on composure and competence. Then, I opened the door. 3 people sat at the conference table. Sandra Mitchell, VP of Human Resources, with her folder full of papers and her expression of practiced sympathy. Gerald Harrington himself, the CEO, the founder, the man whose name was literally on the building, looking uncomfortable in the way that powerful people do when they have to personally deliver bad news. And a third person I didn't recognize. Young, female, expensive suit, leather portfolio open in front of her. "Catherine," Sandra said, "please sit down." I sat. The chair was expensive, ergonomic, designed for comfort during long negotiations. It felt like a trap. "I'm going to get right to the point," Gerald said, his voice carrying that rehearsed quality. "We've made the difficult decision to eliminate the Director of Client Relations position as part of a broader organizational restructuring. Your employment with Harrington and Associates is terminated, effective immediately." The words landed like stones dropped in water. I could feel the ripples spreading outward, could see my career sinking beneath the surface. "Eliminated," I repeated. "The position I've held for 7 years, that I built from nothing, that generates 40% of our client retention." "The position," Sandra clarified, "not your performance. We want to be clear about that. Your work has been exemplary. This is purely a business decision based on organizational needs." "Then why wasn't I told? Why did I find out by having my keycard rejected in the parking lot?" Gerald shifted in his chair. "The timing was unfortunate. We wanted to notify you before you left for Chicago, but the board meeting where this was finalized didn't conclude until after you'd already departed. We made the decision to proceed with the transition rather than wait for your return." Transition. They'd cleaned out my desk, deactivated my access, reassigned my office, all while I was in Chicago, presenting on behalf of the company, networking to bring in new business, representing Harrington and Associates as a loyal employee who had no idea she was being erased. You cleared my desk, I said, while I was gone, representing the company at a national conference. Standard protocol for executive separations, Sandra said. It's actually designed to protect the departing employee, ensures that personal effects are handled carefully, that there's no awkwardness. Protect me? You had security guards pack my belongings into boxes while I was 1,000 miles away, thinking I had a job to come back to. That's not protection. That's humiliation. Gerald raised a hand. That executive gesture meant to calm, to control. I understand you're upset. This is a difficult situation, but we need to move forward with the separation process. Sandra has a severance package for you to review. Before we discuss severance, the third person spoke for the first time. I should introduce myself. I'm Patricia Reyes, in-house counsel. I'm here to ensure the separation process is handled appropriately from a legal perspective. In-house counsel. They'd brought a lawyer to my termination meeting, not because they were worried about me, but because they were worried about themselves, what I might say, what I might do, what claims I might make. I didn't realize I needed a lawyer present to be fired, I said. You don't, Patricia said smoothly, but given your position and tenure, we thought it appropriate to have legal counsel available. They were afraid of me. That realization cut through the shock. They were afraid of what I knew, what leverage I might have. May I see the severance package? I asked. Sandra slid the folder across the table. 4 weeks of severance for 7 years of employment. COBRA continuation at my own expense. A non-disparagement clause that would prevent me from saying anything negative about Harrington and Associates, a non-compete preventing me from working in management consulting within a 100-mile radius for 18 months, and a general release of all claims. This is the same package you offer to administrative assistants, I said. It's our standard executive separation package, Sandra said. No, it isn't. When David Chen left last year, resigned, not terminated, he received 6 months of severance plus his annual bonus prorated. When Margaret Thompson was let go during the last restructuring, she received a year of salary continuation plus career counseling. Each situation is unique, Sandra said, but her eyes flicked to Patricia, looking for backup. My circumstances are that I've been with this company for 15 years, 7 as a director, and I generate 40% of our client retention through relationships I personally built. My circumstances are that I was fired while attending a conference on behalf of the company, had my desk cleared without my knowledge, and am now being offered 4 weeks with a comprehensive release. I closed the folder, pushed it back across the table. I'm not signing this. Gerald's expression shifted, surprise, then concern. Catherine, I understand you need time to process. You can take the weekend to review, consult with your own attorney. I don't need the weekend. I need a severance package that reflects my actual value to this organization, and an explanation of why I was terminated while representing the company. The timing was coincidental, Sandra said. The board decision, was the timing coincidental? Or was it deliberate? Wait until Catherine is gone, clean out her desk, present her with a fait accompli when she returns, make it harder for her to fight back because she's already been erased? Silence. The kind that fills conference rooms when someone says what everyone was thinking, but no one was supposed to acknowledge. I think, Patricia said carefully, we should take a step back. Why don't we schedule a follow-up meeting for next week? Give you time to review the documents, consult with your own counsel. I have concerns now, starting with why the position is being eliminated when client retention is at an all-time high, and my department just brought in 3 new accounts last quarter. Gerald cleared his throat. The restructuring is about organizational efficiency. We're consolidating several director-level positions into a new senior vice president role. It's about streamlining leadership. And who's being promoted to this new SVP role? Another silence. Gerald and Sandra exchanged looks. Patricia studied her documents. The position hasn't been filled yet, Sandra said. But you have a candidate in mind. Jonathan Marcus, perhaps. VP of Business Development. Been positioning himself for exactly this kind of consolidation. The silence confirmed it. Jonathan Marcus, the golden boy who'd arrived with fanfare and promises, who'd spent 5 years building relationships with the board while I was busy actually doing the work, who'd taken credit for wins my team generated, who'd suggested efficiencies that always benefited his department at the expense of others. We're not prepared to discuss personnel decisions that haven't been finalized, Patricia said. I'm going to need my personal effects, I said, standing. The boxes you packed while I was gone. They're in the loading dock area, Sandra said. Security can help you. I'm sure they can. I turned to leave. Patricia, a question. As in-house counsel, are you representing the company's interests or my interests? The company's, she said, at least honest about it. If you want legal representation, you should retain your own attorney. I intend to. The loading dock was around back, concrete, utilitarian. 3 cardboard boxes sat on a pallet with my name written in black marker. I didn't open them, just loaded them into my car, my life reduced to inventory. I was about to pull out when I noticed someone standing near my car. A man in a dark suit, 50-ish silver hair, carrying a leather briefcase that had seen some use. Ms. Shaw? He asked as I rolled down my window. Who's asking? My name is Daniel Morrison. I'm an attorney specializing in employment law. I have a card, if you'd like to see it. He handed it through the window. Morrison and Associates, Employment Law. An address in the financial district. How do you know my name? A mutual acquaintance suggested I might want to speak with you. Someone who thought you might need representation and might not know where to find it. A mutual acquaintance who knew I was being fired today? A mutual acquaintance who's been watching Harrington and Associates for some time and suspected this day was coming, who thought you deserved better than whatever package they were going to offer. I studied his face, looking for deception or manipulation, found nothing except calm professionalism and something that might have been genuine concern. Get in, I said. He walked around to the passenger side, slid in with the ease of someone who'd done this before. Start talking, I said. Who's your acquaintance and why should I trust you? The acquaintance prefers to remain anonymous. Let's just say it's someone who was also restructured by Harrington and Associates and believes the company has a pattern of behavior that deserves scrutiny. What kind of pattern? Eliminating people who know too much, who've been around long enough to see where the bodies are buried, who might ask uncomfortable questions about billing practices, client relationships, and whether the company's success is quite as clean as it appears. Bodies buried. I thought about 15 years of things I'd seen. Clients overbilled and never questioning it. Projects with creative accounting. Non-compete violations settled quietly with payments that never appeared in public filings. I'm listening. The severance they offered, let me guess, 4 weeks, maybe 6. Standard COBRA. Non-disparagement, non-compete, general release. Comprehensive enough to protect them, minimal enough to make you sign quickly. 4 weeks. 4 weeks for 15 years. That's insulting even by their standards. He opened his briefcase, pulled out a folder. I've been researching Harrington and Associates for about 2 years. 6 other executives terminated under similar circumstances. All received minimal severance. All signed releases. All knew things the company didn't want public. You suspect? You don't know? I know some. I suspect more. The releases prevent them from talking, but they don't prevent me from filing public records requests, reviewing court documents, speaking with former clients. Why me? Because vulnerability creates clarity. You're seeing Harrington clearly for the first time, and because you know things, 15 years of things. What do I get out of this? Better severance for starters. Beyond that, depends on what we find. Wrongful termination suit, potentially significant damages, regulatory complaints, potential whistleblower protections, and the satisfaction of not going quietly. I thought about signing the release and walking away with 4 weeks, about 15 years reduced to a month's salary, about Jonathan Marcus sliding into a new role built on my elimination, about every time I'd stayed, late, every weekend I'd worked, every vacation I'd cut short because a client needed something, and I believed that dedication would be rewarded. I thought about the conference in Chicago, standing on a stage representing Harrington and Associates while they were packing my desk into boxes, while security guards were cataloging my personal effects, while HR was preparing the termination documents that would be waiting for me when I returned. The humiliation of it, the calculated cruelty, the assumption that I would just accept whatever they offered because fighting back was harder than moving on. I want to review your research, your office. His office was on the 8th floor of a building in the financial district, solid, professional, conference room with a view of the city. Let's start with what you know, he said. Not what you suspect, what you've actually seen. I thought about 15 years. Client billing. There's a practice called value enhancement. When a project comes in under budget, the hours get redistributed to other projects that are over budget. It's built into the billing software. How widespread? Systematic. We all did it. It's presented as efficiency, but it means clients are charged for work not done on their accounts. What else? I told him about non-compete violations, consultants hired from competitors and immediately put on conflicting accounts, about legal settlements paid from a discretionary fund that didn't appear in standard reporting, about client relationships that ended badly, and the retaliatory actions that followed, about the culture of silence that pervaded everything, the non-disparagement clauses in every separation agreement, the confidentiality requirements that prevented former employees from sharing what they'd seen. I told him about Jonathan Marcus specifically, the golden boy who'd arrived 5 years ago with promises and ambition, who'd systematically positioned himself for exactly the kind of consolidation that had eliminated my position, who'd cultivated board relationships while I was busy doing actual work, who'd taken credit for wins my team generated, who'd suggested the efficiencies that always benefited his department at the expense of others. "This is personal for you," Daniel observed. "He's been maneuvering for years to get where he is. And the first step in his consolidation was eliminating me, the person who might have asked uncomfortable questions about how he achieved his results, who might have noticed that his numbers didn't always add up. That could be useful. Personal vendettas sometimes reveal patterns that impersonal analysis misses. By the time I finished, 2 hours had passed. "This is significant," Daniel said. "If half of this can be documented, we're talking billing fraud, regulatory violations, potentially RICO charges." RICO, for a consulting firm? It's for any organization engaging in a pattern of criminal activity. They didn't fire you because of restructuring. They fired you because they were worried about what you know. What do you need from me? Documentation, emails, billing records, anything showing the patterns? You probably have files saved over the years. I might have some things. Then we have somewhere to start. He leaned back. There's something you should know. 15 years ago, I was you. Different company, same pattern. Terminated while traveling, desk cleared, inadequate severance. I signed because I didn't know I had options. What changed? I went to law school at 45 because I was angry. Started this practice at 50. I find people like us and help them understand their options. Contingency? 30% of anything above the original offer. If they offered 4 weeks and we get 12 months, I take 30% of the difference. You keep the original entirely, plus 70% of everything beyond. The next 3 weeks were a blur of documents and meetings. I didn't sign the separation agreement. Daniel sent a letter noting I was reviewing my options. The response was swift. Would I be willing to meet? The meeting was in the same conference room. Daniel came with me this time. "Ms. Shaw finds the separation offer inadequate," Daniel said, "given her tenure, her performance, and the circumstances of her termination." "What circumstances?" Patricia asked. "The timing, waiting until she was gone to clean out her desk. The inadequacy of the severance, and certain practices at Harrington and Associates that raise questions about billing procedures and regulatory compliance." The temperature dropped. Gerald's expression hardened. "What practices specifically?" "I'm not prepared to detail them here, but my client has documentation that may interest regulatory bodies if we can't resolve this amicably." "What is Ms. Shaw looking for?" Patricia asked. 12 months of severance as salary continuation, full benefits, accelerated equity vesting, removal of the non-compete, mutual non-disparagement. That's significantly more than what we offered. The offer was significantly less than she deserved. And if we decline? Then we explore other options, filing complaints about billing practices, contacting former clients who may not realize they were overbilled, pursuing wrongful termination with significant discovery into company practices. "That sounds like extortion," Gerald said. "It sounds like negotiation. We're asking you to compensate Ms. Shaw fairly. The other matters are separate concerns." "You're bluffing. You don't have enough for those claims." "Maybe. Are you willing to bet on it? Even claims that go nowhere open up discovery, depositions, document requests, all those billing records you'd rather keep confidential." "We need to discuss this internally," Gerald said. The settlement came through 6 days later. 12 months of severance, full benefits, accelerated equity, no non-compete, mutual non-disparagement, more money than I'd expected, more than double the original offer, enough to take my time finding the right next opportunity instead of desperately grabbing the first thing that came along. The negotiation itself had been fascinating to watch. Daniel was masterful, never raising his voice, never making explicit threats, just laying out facts and implications and letting the other side do the math. Patricia Reyes had pushed back initially, had tried to minimize what we had suggested that our claims wouldn't survive scrutiny. But Gerald Harrington's face told a different story. He knew what was at stake. He knew what discovery would reveal. In the end, they paid to make it go away. paid to avoid the depositions and document requests and the public airing of practices they'd rather keep private. Paid because the cost of fighting was higher than the cost of settling, because 12 months of my salary was cheaper than 2 years of litigation and potential regulatory action. But it wasn't really about the money. It was about not going quietly, about refusing to be erased, packed into boxes and discarded, about making them see me, pay for my silence instead of assuming they could take it cheap. Daniel filed regulatory complaints anyway, about billing practices. Those triggered investigations still ongoing when I started my new job 6 months later. Harrington and Associates didn't collapse, but they paid fines, settled lawsuits, lost clients. Gerald retired early. Jonathan Marcus, named in one complaint, quietly departed before his promotion could be finalized. I never learned who Daniel's anonymous source was. Someone else restructured out, probably. Someone who wanted the company to face consequences. I work at a different firm now, smaller but honest. When I interview candidates, I tell them about my departure. Read your contracts carefully, I say. Document everything. And if they ever try to erase you, remember that you have options, that lawyers exist, that regulations exist, that going quietly isn't the only choice. Most don't understand. They're young, believing hard work will protect them. I was like them once. I know better now. The only protection is preparation, documentation, contracts, the willingness to fight. The morning after I accepted Daniel's offer to represent me, I woke up feeling something I hadn't felt in years: clarity. Not happiness exactly. The situation was still terrible. My career was still in shambles. My future was still uncertain. But clarity about what mattered, about who I was, about what I was willing to accept and what I wasn't. For 15 years, I'd defined myself by my work, by my title, my performance reviews, my place in the organizational hierarchy. When they eliminated my position, I thought they'd eliminated me, that Catherine Shaw, Director of Client Relations, was all I was, and without that title, I was nothing. I was wrong about that too. Catherine Shaw was someone who built relationships and solved problems and created value. Those skills didn't disappear when Harrington and Associates decided they were expendable. Those skills were mine, portable, valuable to anyone smart enough to recognize them. The job I eventually took after the settlement, after the regulatory complaints were filed, after I'd had time to decompress and figure out what I actually wanted, was at a firm that understood that. A firm that valued what I could do, not what title I'd held. A firm where the CEO said, during my interview, "I heard what happened at Harrington. I heard you didn't go quietly. That's exactly the kind of person I want on my team." Not everyone saw it that way. Some firms wouldn't touch me. The woman who'd sued her previous employer, who'd filed regulatory complaints, who'd made things difficult instead of accepting what was offered. I became a cautionary tale in some circles, a warning about what happens when you fight back. But I also became something else, a symbol, maybe, or just a data point, proof that fighting back was possible, that the systems of accountability actually worked sometimes, that refusing to be erased could lead somewhere other than professional oblivion. The 3 cardboard boxes sat in my garage for months after the settlement. I couldn't bring myself to open them, to sort through the artifacts of a career that had ended so badly. Eventually, my sister came over and made me deal with them, practical, unsentimental, the kind of person who doesn't let you wallow in grief forever. Most of it was junk, office supplies, old reports, conference materials I'd never look at again. But there were a few things worth keeping. A photo from a client dinner where we'd celebrated a successful project launch. A thank you note from a junior consultant I'd mentored who'd gone on to bigger things. A coffee mug from a conference where I'd presented, the same conference I'd been attending when they cleared my desk. I kept the mug. Use it every morning now, at my new office, where the window's open and the work is honest, and no one is going to pack my belongings into boxes while I'm not looking. They cleared my desk while I was gone, thought they could eliminate me without consequence. But the lawyer was waiting outside, and the consequences are still unfolding. Some doors close and stay closed, but some of them, when you refuse to accept the closure, open onto something better, something like justice, something like proof that going quietly isn't the only option. The city looks different now from where I sit. Not the gleaming towers of corporate ambition, but the quieter architecture of a firm that does honest work for honest pay. My office has windows that open. Sounds like nothing, but feels like everything after 15 years in hermetically sealed buildings, where even the air was controlled by someone else. I think about Catherine Shaw sometimes, the person I was before, the parking lot, before the boxes, before Daniel Morrison handed me his card. She was good at her job, that version of me. Loyal, dedicated, believing that excellence was its own protection. She worked late and traveled for conferences and built relationships that generated 40% of client retention, and she thought that meant she was safe. She was wrong, but I don't blame her for not knowing. The systems that protect us are hidden until we need them, invisible until someone teaches us to see them. Employment law, regulatory compliance, the quiet power of documentation, none of that existed in her world. The settlement changed things, but not just for me. Daniel told me later that my case became something of a template. The way we documented everything, the leverage we'd built, the negotiation strategy. He used it with other clients, other executives who'd been erased and thought they had no options. I met one of them once, about a year after my case settled. A woman named Rebecca Torres, who'd been let go from a financial services firm under similar circumstances. Daniel had represented her, used the same approach. Document everything, identify leverage, negotiate from strength instead of accepting whatever they offered. He told me about you, she said over coffee. Not your name, confidentiality, but your story. Said you were the one who taught him that going quietly was a choice, not an inevitability. I didn't teach him anything. He already knew. He just helped me see it. Maybe. But he said you fought when most people would have signed and walked away. That fighting changed how he approaches these cases. I thought about that for a long time afterward, about the ripple effects of one refusal, one decision to push back instead of accepting the easy path. About how many other executives might have better outcomes because I'd refused 4 weeks of severance and demanded what I was actually worth. The regulatory investigation concluded 18 months after I left Harrington and Associates. The state licensing board found systematic billing irregularities going back at least 5 years. They couldn't prove intentional fraud. That would have required criminal prosecution, which the state attorney general declined to pursue. But they found enough evidence of negligent overbilling to require restitution to affected clients and implementation of new oversight procedures. The total restitution was over $2 million. $2 million returned to clients who'd been charged for work that was never done on their accounts, who'd trusted Harrington and Associates to bill them honestly and had that trust betrayed. I followed the coverage with professional interest, noted the carefully worded press releases about historical practices and voluntary remediation, noted Gerald's retirement announcement, which came 3 weeks after the licensing board's findings were made public, noted the company's stock price, which dropped 15% the day the news broke and never fully recovered. Justice is imperfect. The people who benefit most from wrongdoing rarely face proportional consequences. Gerald Harrington retired to a house in the Hamptons with a pension that probably made my settlement look like pocket change. Jonathan Marcus landed at another consulting firm within 6 months, his LinkedIn profile showing a VP title that suggested the industry had short memories for people with the right connections. But imperfect justice is better than no justice at all, better than signing the release and walking away, letting them think they can do this to the next person. I run into former Harrington colleagues sometimes, at conferences, at industry events, at the coffee shops near my new office where consultants congregate to exchange gossip and business cards. Most of them are uncomfortable when they see me, the woman who didn't go quietly, who made things difficult, who became a cautionary tale that HR probably uses in training sessions. A few of them thank me, quietly, privately, in moments when no one else is listening. "What you did took courage," one of them said. A woman named Sandra who'd been 2 levels below me, who'd witnessed the billing practices but never felt she had the standing to challenge them. I wanted to say something for years, but I was scared. "You showed that it was possible to push back." "I had help," I told her. "I had a lawyer who knew what he was doing, and a situation that gave me leverage. Not everyone has that. But you used it. That's the point. You had leverage and you used it instead of just accepting what they offered." She was right and wrong. I did use the leverage I had. But the leverage existed because I'd spent 15 years documenting my work, building relationships, creating value that the company couldn't easily replace. The leverage existed because I'd done my job well enough that losing me and the knowledge I carried was a genuine risk. That's the thing about fighting back. It's not enough to be angry, to feel wronged, to know that you deserve better. You have to have something to fight with. Documentation, relationships, knowledge that someone wants to keep quiet. The currency of corporate warfare isn't righteous indignation. It's information, carefully gathered and strategically deployed. I teach that now, in my own small way. When I mentor younger consultants, when I advise friends who are navigating difficult employment situations, when I speak on panels about career management and professional development, I tell them to document everything, to keep copies of important emails, to understand their contracts, Really understand them, not just sign them because HR says they're standard. Assume that someday you'll need to prove what you contributed, I say. Assume that the company that values you today might try to erase you tomorrow. Build your case before you need it, because once you need it, it's too late to start building. Most of them nod and forget. Most of them think it won't happen to them, that they're different, that their excellence will protect them. I was like them once. The ones who listen, who actually implement what I'm teaching, they're the ones who will survive when the restructuring comes, who'll have options when they're called into conference room B and told their position has been eliminated, who'll know that the severance package they're offered isn't a final answer, but an opening position in a negotiation they're entitled to pursue. Daniel and I still work together occasionally. Not on my case, that's long since settled, but on others. I've become something of an informal consultant, helping him understand the dynamics of industries I know, the pressure points that might create leverage in situations similar to mine. You should have been a lawyer, he told me once. I was a director of client relations. Same skill set, different application. He laughed at that, but I meant it. The skills that made me good at my job, reading people, understanding motivations, building relationships, knowing when to push and when to compromise. Those are the same skills that make someone effective in litigation. The content is different, but the underlying competencies are the same. Maybe that's why they were afraid of me. Not because I knew about the billing irregularities or the client settlements, but because I knew how to use what I knew. Because I'd spent 15 years learning how to navigate complex situations, how to find leverage and apply it, how to get what I wanted without burning everything down. They underestimated me, thought I was just a relationship manager, just a client handler, just someone who smiled at executives and made them feel valued. They didn't understand that making people feel valued required understanding what they actually valued, and that understanding gave me insight into what they feared, what they needed, what they would pay to protect. They cleared my desk while I was gone because they thought I was weak, because they thought 3 cardboard boxes and 4 weeks of severance would be enough to make me disappear, because they didn't realize that the relationships I'd built, the knowledge I'd accumulated, the skills I'd developed, all of it was leverage, waiting to be used. The lawyer was waiting outside because someone knew better, because somewhere in the network of former Harrington employees, someone understood what I was worth and what the company had done and what might happen if the right person helped me see my options clearly. I never learned who that anonymous source was. Daniel kept that confidence, and I stopped asking. What matters isn't who started the chain. What matters is that the chain existed, that someone cared enough to reach out, that the next person in line got help they didn't know was available. I try to be that for others now. The anonymous tip, the quiet suggestion, the card pressed into a hand at just the right moment. When I hear about someone being pushed out unfairly, I make calls. When I see patterns that suggest a company is treating departures as erasures rather than transitions, I pass information to people who can use it. Not revenge, not vindictiveness, just the understanding that the systems of accountability only work if people use them, and people only use them if they know they exist. They cleared my desk while I was gone, packed 15 years into 3 cardboard boxes and left them at the loading dock. Thought they could eliminate me quietly, efficiently, without consequence or resistance. But the lawyer was waiting outside. The documentation was ready to be deployed. The leverage was there, invisible until it was needed, then suddenly undeniable. Some doors close and stay closed. Some endings are final, no appeal possible, no negotiation available. But some of them, the ones where you refuse to accept the closure, where you push back instead of accepting, where you use every tool available instead of just the ones they offer, those doors open onto something unexpected, something like justice, something like accountability, something like proof that going quietly isn't the only option. Not anymore, not ever again.